everybody, and welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. Everybody's doing well. Beautiful Thursday morning here, following a game one of the Winnipeg Montreal series in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs last night. We also saw game two of Vegas versus Colorado, which that series only 2 games in, but it's already been so entertaining with Colorado just dominating game one. But Vegas showing some major pushback last night, but Colorado again just showing what they're all about and winning a big game last night. But we're going to dive into a lot of things. We're going to talk about all four Stanley Cup playoff series, including Tampa Bay, Carolina tonight, game three, back in Tampa with a 2-0 stranglehold series lead there. We also got game three, Islanders, Bruins back at Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum, where the New York Islanders will look to take a 2-1 series lead with their home crowd. We'll get into how that's going to factor in the out in the States. Just the crowd is making a difference, and I think it's tangible, and I think it's having a major effect. And I think a small building like Nassau, the Islanders fuel off that, and it's helped them lead to some victories. So we'll dive into that. But following Monday, it was all about the Leafs. If you listen to any kind of sports radio on TSN or Sportsnet, it was Leafs ad nauseum. They did their post-mortem, so to speak, yesterday, where Sheldon Keefe and Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan spoke to the media. And I'll touch on that just briefly here. I'm not going to do a full breakdown of the Leafs offseason because I can do that later on a different podcast. But this is the playoffs. What the Leafs do in 2 months is not that important to me right now. Again, I'm not a Leafs fan. I just like talking about the game. But looking at their hierarchy, you got President Brendan Shanahan. Then you got GM Kyle Dubas. Obviously, Keefe below them as head coach. I look at Kyle Dubas. I can give him 0% of the fault for the Leafs losing. 0%. Now, last year, I gave him a lot because he had a team that was too soft to play in the playoffs. Point blank. And to his credit, he addressed it. He got Wayne Simmons. He got TJ Brody. He re-signed Jake Muzzin. Joe Thornton, I did not think was a good move. I don't think it turned out to be a good move. So point for me on that one. But nevertheless, they brought him in, and it was a good story. And Leafs fans could pretend Joe Thornton was, Joe Thornton in 1997, and that was, hunky dory until you lose and you realize the guy's 41 and can't play anymore. But you get a group of players that play a certain style. They're not going to be pushed around. And that was important because nobody pushed the Leafs around more than, Columbus last year. I mean, Boone Jenner was a deterrent for half the Leafs roster. And, that had to be addressed. Kyle Dubas did that. He changed his philosophy. Kyle Dubas' philosophy prior was, hey, I want 5'9" forwards with skill that weigh 165 pounds. Didn't work out real well. But he addressed it. I think it was important that he did, and I give him credit for changing his philosophy and going against his better judgment. I also look at him acquiring Nick Foligno. Hindsight's 20/20, but at the time, Nick Foligno was the best player to acquire the trade deadline for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He brought experience. He's beaten the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs. He's a veteran. He's a leader. He can play. And Taylor Hall was not the right guy to add. And I've heard that over the last couple of days. Oh, they should have traded for Taylor Hall. Okay, they already have Taylor Hall. They got 4 Taylor Halls on their roster. They don't need another one. And yeah, Nick Foligno, nobody burned him more than me with his performance in the playoffs. He got hurt, did that stupid fight with Corey Perry. Then he was a 4th-line center in Game 7. He did not score a goal as a Maple Leaf. Turned out to be a disaster trade. You give up a first-round pick. But prior to the deadline day, who wasn't throwing pom-poms? Leafs Nation. You were. So, yes, did it turn out terrible? But at the time, it was the correct move, so I'm not burning him for that either. So I say Dubas did a really good job this year. He got David Rittich as insurance. He's the one that traded for Jack Campbell originally. Jack Campbell turned out to be a pretty damn good goalie. he lost to Carey Price in a playoff series. No shame in that. Carey Price is the best goalie of his generation. So Dubas, I can't really lay any fault. Brendan Shanahan's the president. I mean, it's so hard to say what he actually does. He just speaks to the media about once a year. You got to say he's with Kyle. So you could say that he's been pushing for a more physical lineup. So I'll give him a little bit of credit for that. But Shanahan's hard to judge on what he does, what he doesn't do, because he's so quiet. Dubas takes the bullets when it comes to making trades and all that. Shanahan's just above them, overseeing everything. So I look at the roster and say, I can't fault Dubas all that much. So this is out of a 100 scale, I fault Dubas 0. Maybe you could say he acquired veterans that were a little too slow, but again, that's hindsight, and I think I'm giving him 0% of the blame. Sheldon Keefe, I'm going to give him 30% of the blame. And I'm going to give him 30% for a couple of reasons. Number one, the power play. I get it. Manny Malhotra runs the power play. So Manny Malhotra should be looped in with Sheldon Keefe with the blame here. But you had Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, Morgan Riley, TJ Brody, you name it, Galchenyuk, Daryl Sittler, Galchenyuk, all these skill players, and your power play went 2 months running efficiency at the bottom 5 of the NHL. Make a change. I don't care if you think this works. If you see something that doesn't work for 2 months, you're just going to continue to do it. It's called incompetence. And, Marner had to address yesterday that there's a rumor that he was unwilling to change his power play position. He said that's an utter lie. Well, why wasn't he changed? Why was he at the top of the circle? Mitch Marner's shot fears no one. His wrister, I'm not saying he's got a 2-year-old shot, but it's not powerful. It doesn't scare you. And you look at Bill Nylander's just flat out got a better shot than Mitch Marner. Point blank. He should have been up there. Marner, below the hash marks. He can distribute. He can be creative with the puck. That never happened. That's coaching. It's called making a systematic change to your lineup and hoping for better results. Yet we never saw it. So Malhotra, Keefe, what's up? And I get it, Manny's his first year behind the bench. But that's a fireable offense, if you ask me, because you have a team that had Stanley Cup aspirations by some people, not me, but some people. And you go out in the first round, and Montreal had the same amount of power play goals in the series as you did. That can't happen. And the power play, it wasn't just that it was bad, it wasn't dangerous. It was never scary. It killed momentum. Montreal would kill the penalty. They come out with more momentum than Toronto ever had when they had the power play. And Matthews ripping the puck over the net and saying, oh, and hear the crowd stir. That's nothing. This power play stunk. You didn't make any changes to it. And also look at coaching. Matthews and Marner played together all year. I get it. They were great in the regular season. But in the playoffs, when you have to win and you see game after game where both players are just invisible, you can split them up. You don't have to keep them together. And I think he just got pigeonholed saying, I can't break these two up. They're my two most dynamic players. Well, you're without John Tavares. Why not break them up and try to distribute the offense? Maybe look in the mirror and say, my most dynamic forward in the series is Bill Nylander. Great. The second is Jason Spezza, who's my fourth line center. That was a healthy scratch in game 1. Maybe look at it that way. Not game 1 of the playoffs, game 1 of the season, I mean. And why not? That's a problem when your fourth line center making $700,000 is your second best forward. Maybe make a change. And the Tavares injury, the Muzzin injury is not an excuse. You should beat the Montreal. You're up 3-1 with Muzzin in game 5. You were up 3-2. Muzzin played most of game 6. You still couldn't close them out. So coaching. Now 70% of the blame goes to the players. You believed in this group. You were walking tall all season long. Matthews had the biggest smile in the world all series long when Ben Sherratt was roughing him up and he's getting power plays and he couldn't score on it. So good smile there. But this is on the players. You didn't get the job done. Point blank. It's as easy as that. You couldn't get the job. Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, you couldn't score a goal when your team needed one. Brass tacks. Jack Campbell in Game 7, you can't let in that Gallagher goal. Now, this series is not on him, but I'm just pointing out players that had poor moments. Rasmus Sandin, can't have those plays in Game 5. Dermott, Marner, your turnovers at the blue line can't happen. But the depth wasn't the problem. It's on your two superstars. Bill Nylander's been a scapegoat in Toronto for years. People hated him because he held out and he till December 1st when he's a restricted free agent and he got his $6.9 million. Well, now his $6.9 million looks pretty damn good because he's worth every penny. And he was their best player in the playoffs. And you can't put this one on him anymore. It's on Matthews and Marner. It's on the two guys that are face of the organization. And this is, I've heard this argument, and it bothers me, that the Toronto Maple Leafs are the Washington Capitals. They're Alex Ovechkin because he never won until he's 32. Now, that's true. However, in his first 5 seasons in the NHL, Alex Ovechkin, first 5 trip to the playoffs, he won 3 playoff series. Marner and Matthews have been in the playoffs 5 times. They've won 0 playoff series. So at least Ovechkin was getting some experience at winning. These two superstars have gotten nothing. They know how to lose Game 7s. We know that. They're very good at it. But it just point blank, it's on them. And Marner, 0 goals in his last 18 playoff games. Played 31 career playoff games. He's got 5 goals. And in that time frame, he's also got 5 puck over the glass penalties. That's a good stat. And Marner can get killed because Matthews is the poster boy and he's the superstar. But Matthews was junked too. And I'm not hearing that enough. Marner will take the bullets, and he deservedly so. But Matthews was just as bad. Getting 8 shots on net, put one in. Who gives a shit about a box score if it doesn't say 1 goal, 1 assist, win? 8 shots on goal, puck possession, expected goals, that's junk at the end of the day if you don't win the game. Advanced analytics are great when you win. When you lose, they're completely meaningless. And for Matthews, for Marner, I think next year's your last shot. I listened to the guys talk yesterday, the higher-ups. They're not moving Matthews or Marner. However, if you lose again next year in the first round, or if you miss the playoffs, you're going back to the old format. You got Tampa, you got Florida, you got Montreal just beat you. You got Boston coming back. That's no cakewalk. Who knows? Maybe you miss the playoffs. But if you do, and it's another first-round playoff exit, something's got to change. You will see them finally say, we're going to break up our big 4. Just how many times are you going to go back to the well on guys that just can't get it done? But I'm sure they'll have an interesting offseason. They'll have some decisions to make on players, and I don't think it's going to be any big names. I think you'll see the top 4 defense come back. Obviously, Zach Hyman's unrestricted free agent. He's the biggest name. Frederik Andersen, I think, is gone. I don't see him coming back to the Toronto Maple Leafs. You got the likes of Galchenyuk and Simmons, Thornton, Spezza to deal with. So we'll see what this team does in the offseason. But they're done, and now we can focus back on the teams that are actually still playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And that brings us to Game 1 last night, Montreal winning Monday night in Toronto, then having to travel to Winnipeg, different time zone, obviously a different city to get ready for their second round series. And there's some headlines coming up. So you got 2 of the best goalies in the world, and Connor Hellebuck, last year's Vezina Trophy winner, and Carey Price, obviously Vezina winner. He's won a Hart Trophy. He's coming off maybe the best series he's ever had. So there's a battle there. Then you also got Winnipeg center ice position where you got Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Paul Stastny, Adam Lowry, who's a horse. So you got playing against kids in Kotkaniemi and Suzuki and Evans. So it seems stacked, but Montreal just has a team that continues to play. They don't have a number one line. They throw guys at you and hope for the best. So going into last night, I wanted to see who Dominic Ducharme wanted to play against Mark Scheifele. Scheifele's playing with Wheeler and Connor. He decides that it's going to be Phillip Danault. And that makes a whole lot of sense to me. We see early in the game, Danault starts the game, but he sees that it's not Scheifele on the ice, the Adam Lowry line. He wins the draw and then immediately skates to the bench. So it's clear Ducharme wants that Danault-Scheifele matchup, and he's going to do his best on the road to get that matchup. So that brings us to later. Beginning of this game, I could tell this was going to be a bad night for Winnipeg because they stunk from jump. They were slow. Their legs were heavy. They look uninterested at times. I mean, I'll get into Josh Morrissey and the fucking disaster that he had last night, but it was an ugly, ugly performance from the Winnipeg Jets the entire night. And the fact that this game was close, kind of an indictment on Montreal a little bit, and I don't think Carey Price particularly had his best game either. But so in the first period, we see Kasperi Kotkaniemi, the guy who's healthy scratch game one, then had a great series against Toronto. He goes in the puck. He's in the corner. He's battling for the puck with Lowry. He wins a puck battle, pokes the puck back to Jeff Petrie. Petrie takes a shot from the point. Kasperi Kotkaniemi goes to the net. Petrie has a slap shot on the ice. Kotkaniemi deflects it past Hellebuck, past a wide open net. This is the first of Morrissey's plethora of errors last night, where he was in no man's land. He's just standing there looking at Petrie, where his job was to cover Kotkaniemi. Was wide open in front. Morrissey's not boxing out, not defending anybody. He's just standing there looking back, and he looked uninterested. I don't know what the hell was up his ass last night, but that didn't work. Again, Winnipeg's just standing around and all over the puck, and Winnipeg just looked uninterested early. So not too long later, we see a bunch of turnovers. Winnipeg standing around. Corey Perry creates a turnover at the blue line. Joel Edmondson helps him get the puck. Edmondson throws the puck to Corey Perry down low. Corey Perry does a pass on his backhand, takes a hit to make a play from Derek Forbort. Eric Stahl's there with a wide open net. Makes it 2-0. This is the fourth line of Montreal that's been really effective. They were good against Toronto. The line of Eric Stahl, Corey Perry, Yoel Armia. It continues tonight, along with Joel Edmondson on the back end, who really contributed offensively, where he's known for being a defensive stalwart. So it's 2-0 Habs early in the game. We did see, too, Montreal's D, what they did against Toronto so effectively was step up. And when I mean step up in the neutral zone, it eliminates the Jets, the Leafs in the first round from getting into the offensive zone. It eliminates ice, makes it tough on you to get zone entries because you basically have to dump the puck and then the puck's gone. It's an easy transition. Shea Weber, Edmondson, Petrie, Sherratt, all these guys are not the fleetest of foot, but they're big and they're hard to get around. And when you step up, they got long sticks and it can make it for a long night. We saw that with Marner. And even, forwards do this well in Montreal. I think KK does it well. We saw Eric Stahl do it on Marner in Game 7. So they continue to do that. Then we see Winnipeg take a penalty. And I'm like, oh, God, this game's going to be over early. But Montreal power play. And I mentioned their top 4D, and they're great. Brett Kulak, he's okay. That's their 5th, 6th defenseman. Then there's Eric Gustafsson. And he's in the lineup because he's a power play specialist. And I love the narrative of a power play specialist when a power play sucks. So that means you're a specialist at being really bad at what you do. And that was case in point here. He's got the puck at the back end. He makes a pass to nobody in the corner. But Corey Perry just doesn't give up. He works for the puck. He gets the puck back to Gustafsson. Gustafsson just hangs around with the puck, and he's trying to be cute, and he's kind of skating back towards the blue line. Adam Lowry, the horse right in his ass. And Lowry's whacking at the puck, and he eventually chips the puck past Gustafsson, and it's a race. Lowry versus Gustafsson. Lowry beats him to the puck. Lowry goes in a breakaway on Price, goes a backhand, forehand under the pad, 5-hole, makes it 2-1. So a shorthanded goal where Winnipeg had no momentum, and they get on the board. Just Erik Gustafsson again. This guy, why Romanov's not playing and this guy is just beyond me. But he stupid play, two really bad plays in the same sequence, and again the power play specialist continues to look like a joke out there. So that's 2-1. I'm thinking, okay, well maybe Winnipeg will get some momentum. No, again this is Josh Morrissey Memorial. The Scheifele line, good offensive possession, they get a good shift, but Morrissey for some reason he just stays at the blue line. He's floating around. Even Scheifele, the entire top line is just, they're not changing. They're just kind of gliding through neutral ice. So Joel Edmondson's got the puck near his own blue line, but he's got the wherewithal. He looks up and he sees all these guys are floating. Morrissey's right next to me. Let's see if I can take advantage here. He throws the puck cross ice off the boards. Beautiful bounce pass right onto the tape of Nick Suzuki. He goes in on a 2-on-1, but beautiful patience. He keeps the puck. Hellebuyck eventually goes down trying to cover both men, and he waits. He's at the side of the net and tucks it past the post of Connor Hellebuyck to make it 3-1 Montreal. That was the score after one, but Josh Morrissey, I give him an F for the period, and I really give Winnipeg an F for just their overall effort last night. But from the get-go, Winnipeg was just chasing the game. They didn't get anything going. They couldn't. I counted by the end of the second period, Montreal had 4 2-on-1s. It was just, I felt bad for Connor Hellebuyck because he had no help last night. I thought the Scheifele line didn't have a lot of jump. Kyle Connor, who is a player I normally love, looked just lazy, uninterested. And Winnipeg looked like they hadn't played in 9 days, but they also looked like they just didn't care. We saw Colorado not play for a week. They beat Vegas 7-1. There was a clear difference between those two teams last night. So that brings us into the third period. 10:38 to go. I really didn't think Winnipeg had much of a chance. But to his credit, Matthew Perreault beats Kulak, steals puck from him in his own zone. He finds Pierre-Luc Dubois streaking in. Dubois is on the right side of the hash. He fires the puck cross ice to Derek Forbort. Forbort streaking in. Price kind of overslides to his left, and Forbort's got the whole net, banks it off the post, and in, makes it 3-2. I'm like, okay, here we go. But who do we go back to here? Josh Morrissey. Josh Morrissey takes a stupid penalty, and on the power play, somehow Shea Weber gets a breakaway. He's, you think of the guys that you want waiting at the blue line for a pass. Shea Weber's there, and he gets a breakaway down the ice. He gets stopped, tries to go 5-hole. He's stopped by Hellebuyck. Then Brendan Gallagher, he's a pesky little guy. He goes to the net. Hellebuyck thinks he has it. He doesn't. Gallagher whacks it home, makes it 4-2 Montreal. And, I thought this would have done it. Kyle Connor scored with a minute 30 left on a beautiful cross-ice feed from Nick Ehlers. But that wasn't the big headline at the end of the game. The big play was Jake Evans. He skates down the ice. It looks like Montreal is going to ice the puck, but all the D are pinched in, so he's going to win the race to the puck. And he's going to put in an empty netter to seal the game 5-3, which he does. But in the same time frame, we see Mark Scheifele, who, to this point, just for some context, he was having a bad game, and he was playing really pissed off. He got a penalty for harassing Ben Sherratt, throwing his helmet off the ice. He was getting into a lot of scrums. He was angry, and you could tell he was kind of losing his cool a little bit. But we see Jake Evans. He gets the puck. He's about to tap it home, and Mark Scheifele, coming from all the way down the ice, lays out Jake Evans, and I mean lays him out. He hits him. He's coming in hot, hits him in the numbers, straight up. And he Jake Evans does like he flies through the air and lands on his head. His body kind of contorted, switched positions, and he lands a lot on his helmet on his head. And it was scary for sure. His body kind of just flipped positions, and the helmet hit first. And it was more. I was more scared for his neck more than anything because I thought it just looked really uncomfortable. But just for context, this morning he's back at the hotel with his team. He's alert. He's conscious, so he's okay. So that's obviously a good thing. So we wish him all the best. I think he's had a really good postseason. He's 7th round pick who just fights and scraps for everything he gets in this league. But what does this mean for Mark Scheifele? And in the NHL, there's likely going to be a suspension. And I've looked at the hit a bunch, and I think the most important view you have is your first one. Because looking at the video review 85 times, again, you guys know how, if you listen to this podcast, you know how I think about video review. I hate it. Any sport, they get it wrong more than they get it right, in my opinion. And it's the same here. If it hits dirty on first glance, then it's dirty. I looked at it the first time. He hits him in the chest, and you see the head snap back, and this is the reaction that people get. They see the head go, and they say, well, that's a dirty hit. It's a direct hit to the head. No. The first point of contact was his chest, not the head. And that's got to be remembered here. That can't just be thrown away. And too often it's not. It's, he hit him in the head. But do I think Mark Scheifele would be suspended? Yes, I do. And here's why. I think if this hit would have happened in the first or second period, he would have gotten a 5 in a game misconduct. Missing the rest of the game, that's time served. This hit came in the last 50 seconds of the game. And obviously getting stretchered off. Again, the injury should have nothing to do with the suspension, even though we all know it does, which I also think is ridiculous. But I think because it came so late in the game, the NHL will suspend Mark Scheifele. I don't suspect he'll be playing Friday night in Game 2. So my prediction is he'll get a 2-game suspension. If it was me, I don't think I'd suspend him. I really don't, because he didn't hit him in the head. Hitting a guy here, right in the chest, and seeing his head snap back does not mean you hit him in the head. It means you hit him hard, no doubt. But this is the same thing with the Tom Wilson hit on Brandon Carlo. He hit him here. If his head snaps back after the fact, that's not the player's problem. He hit him where he's supposed to hit him. But I think Mark Scheifele will get a 2-game suspension, which is killer for the New York Jets. I mean, they were without Paul Stastny last night. It was kind of, we don't really know why he didn't play last night. Obviously, they hadn't played in 9 days. He played in Game 4, so he wasn't available. That's a center that they really need back if Scheifele's going to be suspended. And this is a big opportunity for Pierre-Luc Dubois. You traded for him because of situations like this, the playoffs. Can he step up? I think with Scheifele out, you're going to see Danault play against Dubois likely in that line. So I don't know. I think for him, it's a big opportunity. You're with a new team. You want to earn a potential contract. This is put up or shut up time. And Montreal's already got the momentum. They know they're going home at least with the split. They're without Mark Scheifele. Obviously, Jake Evans hurts, but missing Mark Scheifele is a hell of a lot worse than missing Jake Evans. And it's a tough spot for the Winnipeg Jets. But as their game as a whole last night, they were terrible last night. And I don't give them a whole lot of, I don't feel bad for them, so to speak, because they played lethargic. They played like they're uninterested. Mark Scheifele, the only thing he could do is be aggressive physically. He got penalties against Sherratt. He got a 5-minute major. On the ice, when it comes to doing anything tangible, when it comes to winning, he did nothing of that last night. Kyle Connor was terrible. Josh Morrissey had the worst game of his career last night. I couldn't think of a worse one for him. So we'll wait and see on Mark Scheifele. Again, I think he'll get 2 games. Would I give him 2 games? No, I wouldn't, because of what I just said. but I'm not the Department of Player Safety. They Mark Scheifele's not a dirty player, so maybe it'd only be one. I think that would be fair as well. If he only got one game, he's got not a lot of prior history. Ryan Reeves got 2 for the play on Graves. I think if Scheifele got 1, I think that's more than fair. But we'll see what comes of it. But Montreal, credit to them. Did Winnipeg play terrible last night? Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. You came to play. Corey Perry played a hell of a game last night. Joel Edmondson played great. You got goals from Kotkaniemi. Montreal is not a first line. They just have every line contributes. The fourth line scores a goal last night. KK scores a goal. Gallagher scores on the power play. They just get contributions throughout their lineup. It's not about, okay, we have a number one line. We need Marner and Matthews to show up. They don't have that. They have a group of players that just play together. And it doesn't matter who came to play last night for Winnipeg. It's 1-0 Montreal, and that's a fact. And they can take that one to the bank. That they're up 1-0, and they got the momentum heading into game 2 Friday night. And also, Carey Price didn't play that well. He lets in 3 goals, and Winnipeg doesn't win the game. That's a tough one too, because you can only assume that he's going to get better as the series goes on. So tough start for Winnipeg. We'll see how they bounce back on Friday, likely without Mark Scheifele, one of their top players, one of my favorite players in the league. Also last night, we saw Colorado host Vegas game 2. Game 1, it was ugly. It was 7-1 Colorado. Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar playing like video game characters out there. Poor Robin Leonard was in there for the start. And before the game was interesting, he was not dressed. I'm not sure if he's injured or what happened with him, but he was not on the bench. Marc-Andre Fleury obviously got the start, but he was not available last night. And no Robin Leonard. They're still without Braden McNabb, who's on the COVID list, but they had to come up with a better effort last night, and to their credit, they did. But last night's game, I call this the Phillip Grubauer game. And Colorado, you'd say their whole lineup, they got such a deep team. They're D stacked. They got Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Landeskog. This team's loaded. What's the biggest deficiency that you can point out just tangibly? And you could say, well, they have inexperience in net. Phillip Grubauer's never won a playoff series until they swept St. Louis. Phillip Grubauer is not a great goalie. He's a backup. He was a backup in Washington. He's not a starter. He's not good enough to win a Stanley Cup with this group. Well, Colorado didn't have their best game last night, but Phillip Grubauer sure as hell did. And on the same day he got nominated for the Vezina Trophy, he came out and played a game last night. 39 save performance, a couple key saves, 7:32 left, robbing Alex Tuch in tight. Huge save there. We see Riley Smith. He scored a goal in the game. He stopped him point blank midway through the second period. That was a big save for him. He was just dialed in last night. And, Vegas threw everything but the kitchen sink at him, but they still couldn't get it, still couldn't beat him. They still could not do anything with him. And he kept them in the game for majority for Colorado. And we see Saad score in the first period, Tyson Yost power play. But as they go to overtime, and they call a penalty on Riley Smith for slashing Mikko Rantanen's stick off the faceoff. Now, it was a questionable call. I probably would have made it. It's the playoffs. It was a battle. Nevertheless, they called it. And who scores on the power play but Mikko Rantanen? McKinnon finds him. He's in his office there where near the faceoff circle. He just rips it, hits a Fleury shoulder into the top corner. Colorado takes game 2, 3-2. And it's a tough loss for Vegas because you should have won the game on the road. You would have went back to Vegas with the split. And I look at Colorado now. You win a game where you shouldn't. We see Tampa do that. I think Tampa's done that twice so far in their first round series against Colorado, and we'll get into that. But it's just so impressive to see what this team can do. And they find a way to win that game. Again, Vegas should have won it. They had a better effort. They came out with purpose. They were mad after their game 1 performance. And yet Colorado still found a way to win. 2 power play goals. You can't take penalties against this team. You got Makar, McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog all on the ice together. What do you think's going to happen? And for Vegas, you need to find a way to put the puck in the net. Again, Grubauer was great, but get in front of him. Make life difficult. We didn't see that. It was too many chances where it's just off the rush. That's not gonna work unless you're Mikko Rantanen with that shot. You're not scoring from out there. And I just look at this Colorado team, and they don't have many weaknesses. They really don't. And in a game where they should have lost, they win, and it's got to be disheartening for the Las Vegas Golden Knights. But we'll see what they can come up with in Game 3 and what kind of effort they have. That'll be Friday night. But they know their season's on the line Friday night. They need to win on Friday. Fleury, I'm not saying it was your fault last night, but you let in 3 goals on 25 shots. That's not going to work. You need to make some more saves. For Vegas, get pucks in front of Grubauer. And McKinnon, he only had 1 point. You contained him well last night. He didn't have a great game, but you still win. And for Vegas, just Friday night, you have to win that game. For Colorado, they're 6-0 in the playoffs. So if they played 6 games, 6-0, and they have a 30-10 margin, goals for, goals against right now. It's incredibly impressive what they've done. And they're so head and shoulders, to me, so far look like the best team. They've beaten St. Louis, no slouch. And now you're up 2-0 against Vegas. I think the second best team in the NHL this season. Those two teams were the best. Yeah, Toronto was great. And, Tampa and whoever else, Carolina, they're the 2 best teams. And you've beaten them twice so far. You need to beat them 2 more, obviously. But the crowd in Vegas will be fired up Friday night. But if Colorado could go in there, weather the siege, and get a win, the series is over. Vegas may win a game here and there, make push it to 5-6, but it's a wrap. Colorado can start prepping for the winner of Montreal, Winnipeg, because that's the way the bracket goes. With Montreal advancing and not Toronto, it was set. Now that Colorado Vegas will play the winner of Montreal Winnipeg in the conference final, and Boston Islanders will play the winner of Tampa Carolina in the conference final. So we interesting developments for sure, and we'll see how this plays out. But for Vegas, it's got to be a crushing loss last night, where I don't think it should have been a power play there, but it was, and Vegas, to their credit, took advantage of it. So good win for Colorado. And, they continue their unbeaten streak here in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Tonight, we have the two other series. Carolina at Tampa Bay tonight. Carolina losing games 1 and game 2 a score of 2-1. Game 1, you could say Alex Nedeljkovic let in a stinker. Probably true. Game 2, he also let in one you'd want back. The Alex Killorn goal, the first goal of the game where he threw it from the point. One he'd want back. But you lose a pair of games 2-1. That's hard to throw it at your goaltender. And you gotta look at, I think Carolina's been better in the first 2 games, just scoring opportunities wise, but the opportunities they're getting are all to the outside. They're not getting the puck to the middle of the ice, and that's where you score goals. We saw the one goal they had in game 2, Aho fed Svechnikov. He was open in front. He beat Vasilevsky under the arm. These are going to have to be dirty goals. You're not beating Andrei Vasilevsky, who I consider the best goalie in the NHL, from outside. You might beat him on a point shot. You might beat him on a shot from the point with traffic in front, but it's not happening with Svechnikov on the outside with a direct look where Vasilevsky, who's 6'6", can get his shoulder on the puck. That's not going to work. And Nedeljkovic, yeah, he needed to make a big save here and there, but he's let in 4 goals in 2 games. It's hard to criticize the kid for losing that. I don't suspect that they're going to make a goalie change because it hasn't been his fault. You need to produce more offense. Aho, Svechnikov, even Dougie Hamilton provides something offensively for this team. And, Tampa, in their first 2 games, they haven't been even really that great. Their best players in game 2, in my opinion anyway, were Anthony Cirelli. Obviously, he scored a goal, so that's easy to point out, but the guy was all over the puck. He was playing penalty kill. He was winning puck battles. Him, Killorn, Stamkos scored both goals. I thought he played fantastic. And they're able to keep him through salary cap, just, making it work. Such a huge ad that they didn't have to, offload him. He's so valuable to that team, and he proved it continues to prove it throughout his playoff performances. And then Ryan McDonagh. Ryan McDonagh gets overshadowed because of Victor Hedman for good reason. Victor Hedman's the best defenseman in the NHL. Ryan McDonagh was a captain for the New York Rangers. He's been to a Stanley Cup final prior to his time in Tampa, winning a cup last year. He's been through the wars, but his defensive play, he just shuts down the opponent's top players, and he does it so efficiently. He's playing with Eric Chernak, who I think he's really helping Chernak become a really, really, really good defenseman. Chernak is not going to put up a lot of points, but he's big, he's mean, and he's what David Savard was last year in Columbus. David Savard is on Tampa, ironically, right now, but he's injured. He didn't play in games 1 or 2. Luke Schenn stepped in, and that's another key point to this good organization, having players available in waiting. Luke Schenn played last year in the Stanley Cup playoffs. John Cooper is comfortable playing Luke Schenn. He's not playing him like they do Eric Gustafsson or Brett Kulak in Montreal, where he's playing 5 minutes and they're fearful 5 minutes. He's out there on a regular shift, and he's doing it efficiently. You're not worried about Luke Schenn making too many mistakes. We saw him blow a tire in game 2, but Luke Schenn's a guy that they trust. They brought him back for $700,000. He's spent time playing this year, time on the taxi squad, but to his credit, he's here in the playoffs, and you need him to step in and play. He's doing that. So great, but Ryan McDonagh, I just see him be so great playing against Aho, playing against Svechnikov. Doesn't matter who it is, he just comes out and eliminates scoring opportunities. He gaps up on people, and that's the type of defenseman at playoff time that you want. Jacob Slavin's the same thing on the other side of the puck. I think he's played a ton against Palat, Point, Kucherov. What have those guys done? In the series so far, Point's got a power play goal. You're not throwing that 5-on-5. Point, Palat, and Kucherov have really been quiet. And that's got to be a little bit fearful for Carolina that you've lost 2 games where your superstars of Tampa really haven't looked that great. But Slavin and Hamilton and Pesce, those guys have limited their scoring opportunities. And it's been Stamkos, Killorn, Cirelli that have really chipped in. But looking at this series, obviously you're back in Tampa. You're down 2-0. Tampa did this to Florida. We saw Florida win game 3, but they couldn't, they couldn't push it more than 6. But obviously, like Vegas, this is a must-win tonight. You're Carolina. You're not coming back down 0-3 against the defending Stanley Cup champions. This team still has Stanley Cup pedigree. I think they still believe that they're the best team in the NHL, which I'm not going to argue with them. I think Colorado is right there with them. But you're not going to get a big disagreement from me on Tampa being right there. They continue to win. They get leads early in series. That's pivotal. And they're getting the kind of goaltending in the series that they got last year. Andrei Vasilevsky continues to show why he's so valuable. And for Carolina tonight, you need to get a win. Just point blank. It can be ugly. It can be muck it up in the corners, ugly goals, which is what you're going to need to do to beat a team like Tampa. But tonight it's put up or shut up for Carolina, because if you lose tonight, it could be a sweep, and that's a big disappointment, because I thought the series would go a lot farther. But I think Carolina will find a way to win tonight. They played a tight checking game. They may need to open it up a little bit, and continue to contain the superstars in Tampa Bay, but just do it a little bit more efficiently. Playing against, doing it for your players, getting Svechnikov, Aho, Teravainen, time with the puck, and time to maneuver and make some dynamic plays. So that brings us into Boston at the New York Islanders, game 3 tonight. Boston rallied in game 2 in the third period. Marchand and Bergeron both scoring goals, but Casey Zizekas ultimately got the overtime winner off a good bounce for the Islanders, bad one for Jeremy Lozano, the Bruins. But this series has been razor thin, how close it's been so far. We've seen some really good play from Boston's top line, Pastrnak, Marchand, and Bergeron so far. And we've seen Pajot continue to have a great playoff for the Islanders. Islanders continue to be gutsy. They went back to Semyon Varlamov in game 2. They're not afraid to play Sorokin or Varlamov. They're comfortable with either guy. And Barry Trotz will make a switch at any time if he thinks that it'll help his team win. But looking at this game, it's been tight checking. It's physical. The the Islanders' defense is really something to look out for. I think they've done a really good job at limiting opportunities for Boston other than their top line. We saw Charlie Coyle score early in game 2. But you think of the series, you can't think of another line that's really been that dynamic for the Bruins. You got Mayfield, you got Nick Leddy, you got Adam Pelech. These guys are really good at defending. They're not flashy, they're not brand name guys. Andy Green's a veteran. Dobson's a kid, but he's playing with Andy Green. These defense just they're kind of like Montreal's in that they gap up on you. They're physical, they're big, and they're not the most skilled. They're not gonna outskill you in any way, but they do it effectively and efficiently. And then you got a guy like Casey Zizekas, Matt Martin, and Kyle Clutterbuck. I still don't get why they're not matched up against the Bruins top line. That's something I would try. You have home ice here. You have last change. If I'm Barry Trotz, that's the matchup I want. I want Zizekas, Clutterbuck, Martin against the perfection line. Identity line versus the perfection line here. See how that matchup favors. I don't think it would be that bad for the Islanders, because the other lines just aren't working. You're not seeing them contain this group. But for the Islanders, you need to continue to get scoring from guys. Palmieri, it's been a good trade getting him. He's been effective for this team. Pageau's had a great playoff. The guy's a playoff performer. He did it in Ottawa. He continues to do it here in Long Island. And I think Barzal is a guy who still has more to bring. I've said before, he's playing with Leo Komarov and Jordan Eberle. I think he could be on a more dynamic line if you put him with a Brock Nelson, even a Josh Bailey, who's had a decent playoff so far. But Barry Trotz. He's not going to break up his methods. He's one of the best coaches of all time, so I'm not going to question his thinking here. But I just think Barzal is their most dynamic player. You can put him with more dynamic people. And I don't know why there's a hesitancy to do that. He's clearly, their best player. And I don't know why there's a fear to put him with a guy like Brock Nelson even and do it that way. But we'll see. We'll see what happens tonight. I think this series is going to be a deep one. I think the teams are very even. Obviously, Boston is more high-end skill than New York Islanders, but the Islanders just have this way of keeping themselves in games. They can get outshot. It looks like they're going to lose, but they get big saves. They contain the rest of the lineup, and if they can even put a little bit of stranglehold on that top line of Boston, I think it favors the Islanders in this series, where we could see a rematch of last year's conference final between Tampa and the Islanders. That wouldn't shock me either to see these two teams do battle once again. But still a lot of series to play. Obviously, you got Tuukka Rask, who's an X factor in the Bruins net, and we'll see how the Bruins react. I think their defense was a little shaky in game 2. We'll see how they can react to tonight and see what kind of effort they bring to the game. Apologize there for the video. Little Dirk is just not having a great morning. Just a little bit angry with me, but nevertheless. So yeah, it's the Stanley Cup playoffs. 2 games tonight, 2 games every day until the series are done, until the third round, and hopefully you can get some time to watch the game. 8:30 and 9 tonight, so not too late of games. Obviously, the Vegas one in Colorado starts at 11, so that's a little bit later for everybody. But tonight shouldn't be too bad. You get 8:30 start, 9 o'clock start. After every period, you get to watch the game a little bit. So that's obviously promising tonight for everybody. So let's pivot to the NBA. It's a lot's happened since Monday when I last chopped it up talking about sports, and a lot of series are over. We saw last night Philadelphia 76ers advance, beating the Washington Wizards without Joel Embiid, their superstar, their MVP candidate. But, they managed the game. If he's got a tear in his meniscus, I think he needs surgery, but he's going to wait until after the season. But obviously that doesn't bode well for the Sixers' chances of potentially winning a title. You need him healthy to beat a team like the Brooklyn Nets or even the Milwaukee Bucks. But he's not going to be 100%, but he likely will be back for round 2. But last night, they got good efforts from a lot of their lineup. Ben Simmons, who was, crucified after game 1 because of his pathetic free throw shooting. He had a triple-double, 19 points, 10 rebounds, 11 assists. He was distributing. We saw Tobias Harris, who's been a really good player this year. He gets 28 points. Then Dwight Howard off the bench, only playing 16 minutes, but he gets 12 points, 8 rebounds, 3 blocks. You can't ask more from him. He's been great for Philadelphia this year. He was great for the Lakers last year in a reserve role, and he continues to show why he kind of had a second career. He was obviously a superstar defensive player of the year in his early days in Orlando. Then he went through about a 5 to 6 year stretch where it was ugly. He was in LA, in Houston, in Charlotte, in Washington, where it didn't work for him. Now he found a home in LA, and he's carried it to Philly, where he's been a great player off the bench for these, obviously winning a title with the Lakers last year and getting the number 1 seed for the Sixers in the East this season. But for the Wizards, I think it's a bit of disappointment last night. I thought they'd make a better push to push the series longer. They lose by 18 points, and Russell Westbrook had a pedestrian game, wasn't great shooting the basketball. He never is. Bradley Beal had 34 points, but they were without Davis Bertans. We just didn't see a lot from this group. I thought we'd see more pushback. I thought Westbrook would bring more of a fight to the game last night, but he didn't. And that leaves the Wizards with a number of questions here. What do they do? Excuse me. What do they do here? Russell Westbrook's got 1 year left in his deal. Do they keep him? Do they move him? Bradley Beal's got a number of years left, but he's wanted out of Washington for a number of years now. He likes bringing Russell Westbrook, but what did they do? They got some younger players that they have to sort out, but it's tricky in Washington. I mean, they only got into the playoffs because of the play-in, and they're not a superpower by any means. And with Russell Westbrook, Bradley Beal, this team is not going to be contending for an NBA title anytime soon. So they're just kind of in that middle of the road, and I suspect that they'll be there again next year if they bring back a similar roster where they'll be 7-8 seed, battling for a playoff spot. So, but credit to the 76ers. They advanced to the second round, and they had to wait about 20 minutes before they knew who they'd be playing in the second round because the game starts about half hour later. The Atlanta Hawks are in New York at Madison Square Garden, and they're playing. The Atlanta Hawks are playing the New York Knicks, and it was a sight to behold for sure to see the Atlanta Hawks and the New York Knicks playing in the playoff series. But the Atlanta Hawks advance to the second round of the playoffs. And it was these two teams both don't have a lot of playoff success in the recent years, but since Nate McMillan took over in Atlanta, they've had the third best record in the NBA, and that that tells you everything you need to know. And they win last night just based on Trae Young, Bogdanovich. Their 3-point shooting was too good. Clint Capella getting boards, and the Knicks. It was a great story. They win a game. You see them make the playoffs, which was a good story. But it was just Atlanta's better than the New York Knicks. The Knicks are promising. They got Tom Thibodeau, Julius Randle. He's going to be the most improved player. I think R.J. Barrett, the Canadians, really taking strides in his game. But Atlanta's just got better players there. Trae Young's better than any guard on the Knicks roster. Clint Capella, they couldn't contain off the boards. They got Bogdanovich, who's a good 3-point shooter. Kevin Huerter, Danilo Gallinari, John Collins, DeAndre Hunter. They just couldn't match up with the Atlanta Hawks. And looking at the future, Trae Young at 36 last night. He's obviously a dynamic player. I think the fans in Philly will be booing him steadily. He got it in New York. I suspect we'll see it in Philadelphia as well with those fans and how they react. But the big thing for me is Joel Embiid's health. I mentioned if he's not healthy, Atlanta's got a shot to at least make this a series, in my opinion, because of their 3-point shooting. Trae Young's not a great 3-point shooter, but when he starts making them, they come in volume. Huerter is a 3-point shooter. John Collins is a 3-point set shooter. You got Danilo Gallinari, who can shoot the 3. Pretty much every starter they have, other than Clint Capella, is not afraid to fire that 3-point shot. And you look at Philly. Ben Simmons, he's not shooting 2, so he's not going to be shooting. He's not shooting from 3. Tobias Harris is a decent 3-point shooter. Obviously, Seth Curry is a guy who's a great 3-point shooter. But if Embiid's not there, You're going to have Thibault or Dwight Howard. And again, that's not a three-point shooter. So I look, if Atlanta can make threes in volume, this could be a series. I think Philly will take it in 6 games, but it's a big opportunity for Atlanta just to try to expose. And even for Clint Capella, who will likely be guarded by Joel Embiid if he's in the lineup, try to get him in foul trouble early, because that opens up the lanes for your team, and it hurts the Sixers. Obviously, Dwight Howard does a good job in his reserve role, but he's not Joel Embiid. He's not going to step out from outside the three-point line, and he makes it easier for you to contain him defensively. So we'll see Atlanta versus at Philadelphia in round 2, and Milwaukee versus Brooklyn. So both East matchups are set. We do know Milwaukee, Brooklyn, game 1 will be on Saturday. I suspect we'll see Atlanta, Philly, game 1 on Sunday, but that's not set yet either. But it's both series in the East are complete. Out West, there's still a lot of indecision. We saw the Lakers get blown out on Tuesday night by 30 points. They're without Anthony Davis. I don't suspect that he'll be playing tonight, but he could be in game 6, where he'll be. They need him. Obviously, we saw LeBron struggle in game 5. Dennis Schroeder had 0 points. Kyle Kuzma had 0 points. So tonight, LeBron heading into Phoenix, it's a must-win for him. I mean, to win the title and then go out in the first round this year would be devastating for the Lakers and for LeBron's career as a whole. He's 36. How many more kicks at the can is he really going to have at winning a title? He's got 4 to his credit. Obviously, he's an all-time great, but he's got aspirations of getting 6, tying at least Michael Jordan, and he's been chasing that ghost for years. So big game tonight there. In LA in front of a crowd, but I have a feeling the Lakers will win tonight. They'll push it to 7, bring it back to Phoenix on Saturday, where we'll see a game 7. So I think the Lakers will win tonight, but that's up in the air. When it comes to last night, we saw the Utah Jazz, who had the best record in the NBA during the regular season. They lose game 1 to the Grizzlies without Donovan Mitchell, and the Grizzlies look like a team. They look like a team that's on the rise. John Morant, Dylan Brooks, Jonas Valanciunas. This group has some players, has some talent that they can build on, and it was apparent in the first round. But the Jazz, they get Donovan Mitchell back, and after that, they win 4 straight. And this is why I like the Jazz for the season. I did a podcast with Billy Cole, and I said I think the Utah Jazz are going to be the sneaky team. And if they can get the Lakers to lose, Utah, I think, is the favorite to get to the NBA Finals. Obviously, we'll talk about the Clippers in a minute, but they got everything you need. Donovan Mitchell is a superstar, in my opinion. He's a great player. You got Rudy Gobert as a center. You got 3-point shooting with Bogdanovich, Mike Conley. You also got a 6th man of the year in Jordan Clarkson, he can give you 25 to 30 on any given night. Got 24 last night in limited minutes because the game was really over by the end of the first quarter. It scores 40-20 Utah at the end of the first quarter. They ended up winning by 16. But they're still awaiting their opponent. They're going to play the winner of the Mavericks Clippers series. And that was also last night, game 5 in Staples. And we see a crazy series. First 2 games in LA, Mavericks win them both. Then we head to Dallas, and Clippers win both in Dallas. So last night, you're thinking, well, Clippers got the momentum, but as you guys know, I don't believe in momentum from game to game. It's fresh. And that was proven last night because the Mavericks head back to Staples. They love shooting on those rims. It's clear that they do because Tim Hardaway averaged 5 points a game in his 2 games in Dallas. He's averaging 20 points a game in his 3 in LA. And last night he gets 20 points exactly. He also adds 8 rebounds. But Luka Doncic had a terrible game 4. He's been dealing with a neck problem. Only had 19 points. Was turning the ball over. His free throw shooting was pathetic. Last night was just a clinic by blossoming superstar where he had 42 points, 8 rebounds, 14 assists, feeding guys left and right, including Hardaway. They put Boban Marjanovic, the 7'3" player, into the starting lineup last night. Finney-Smith, Porzingis only had 8 points each, but he was just distributing the basketball, getting guys opportunities when he could. And he did everything for this team last night. He played 43 of the 48 minutes, so didn't have a long break. He he had to distribute the offense the whole game. He had the ball in his hands the whole night, and because he had to create for this group. And on the other side, it was just another performance from Kawhi Leonard and Paul George that's forgettable. Kawhi Leonard had 3 points in the fourth quarter. His last shot of the game to tie was an air ball. And we saw Rajon Rondo just flip out at him, yell in his face, saying, "What the hell are you doing?" And this team has, championship aspirations like the Lakers, and they're now down 3-2 in the same position. They both need to win a game 6 and win a game 7 to advance just to the second round, where the Clippers will play Utah. That's not an easy series. The Lakers don't know who they'll play yet. They'll play Portland or Denver, who are going to be playing in their game 6 tonight. Denver leads that series 3-2. Games in Portland tonight, Damian Lillard had a 55-point performance the other night, including making 12 out of 17 3-point shots, making 3 threes in the first overtime, making a 3 at the end of regulation to tie the game. He just had a spectacular performance. 55 points, the 5th most points in the history of the NBA playoffs for one game. But looking at this right now, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Reggie Jackson, but it's on your 2 stars. It's role players. Yeah, they might not be great certain nights, but you can't have a 3-point fourth quarter when you're in a nip and tuck game. You can't not show up for Kawhi Leonard. He was great in Toronto. He has not been. He was great at Game 3 and 4 in Dallas, and I'm sure that's what they're banking on, him being great in Dallas again on Friday. But he hasn't been there in the games in LA. I don't get it. But if you're Dallas, you stomp on their throat. Tomorrow night, you finish this off. You do not want to go back to Game 7. Obviously, you've won in LA 3 times, but finish it off. If you're Luka Doncic, ride the wave of your momentum. You're playing great. Finish this series while you can. Don't think, well, Game 7, okay, we got the upper hand here. No, finish it off. And for the Clippers, if they lose in this first round, and it would be worse because if the Clippers lose in the first round, if the Lakers lose in the first round, because you wouldn't have to beat the Lakers. They kind of tried to avoid the Lakers until the third round at the latest because they kind of ducked in the last couple games. If you get ousted in the first round, then you don't play the Lakers. If you get ousted in the first round, the Lakers are out, and you wouldn't have to go through them. That makes it worse because then you'd have to beat Utah and then Denver or Phoenix. Well, those aren't scary opponents. It's not LeBron James and the Lakers. So the Clippers, Kawhi's got an opt-out clause. I suspect he's going to opt out because he'll want more money. But I can't see him leaving LA. But Steve Ballmer is the richest owner in professional sports. This guy is not going to be happy with the operation. Paul George has already re-signed. He's locked in LA. But what kind of changes will happen for the LA Clippers if they blow a 3-1 lead last year in the second round, and if you lose in the first round to a team that you have no business losing to? You should beat this team. But Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Marcus Morris Sr., you need to play better in Game 6. And they've played well in Dallas so far, so maybe that'll tells us that they'll win Game 6 and force Game 7. But it does not look good right now for the Los Angeles Clippers. The Lakers game 6 tonight from LA, 11:30 start between them and the Phoenix Suns. So two NHL games tonight, pair of NBA games. We got Denver, Portland at 9 o'clock as well. Also going right now, I thought I'd point this out, is the French Open. This morning we had a big development where Ash Barty, the world number 1 in the women's game, was forced to withdraw with an injury. It opens up the draw huge for every player involved, but she was playing some great tennis coming in. She had won one tournament, been to another final, losing to Sabalenka a couple weeks ago. She was forced to pull out. We see Bianca Andreescu lose early. Dominic Thiem is out on the men's draw, going to the French Open final last year. So draws are opening up for guys. Felix Auger-Aliassime lost in his first round match for the Canadian, but Roger Federer is in action today. Novak Djokovic got through. Rafa Nadal looks like he's just cruising out there. He's playing this afternoon as well in a second round match. But really the interesting is the women's draw because If Nadal didn't win the tournament, it would be the biggest surprise that there's ever been at this tournament. He's only lost twice. He's looking for his 13th French Open major. But with Ash Barty out, with Kvitova pulling out with injury, Bianca being out, world number 10, Belinda Bencic getting beaten straight sets yesterday, it's anyone's game. And we'll see who can step up to the moment and really claim. My pick is Sabalenka. Arnia Sabalenka is my pick from Belarus to win the French Open this year. You got a woman like Sofia Kenin who's on the rise. I think she's obviously a dangerous threat, but I'm going to go with Sabalenka to win the tournament this year. She's never won a major. She's coming off winning a clay court event a couple weeks ago at the Monte Carlo Masters, and I think she'll get the win. But again, trying to predict a women's draw in a major is impossible because you can see an unseeded woman go to a final and win. We've seen it happen many times, including Yelena Ostapenko, who was 16 3 years ago, win at this very event. So French Open is going to be on the next couple weeks. Good clay court tennis, so check that out. But lots happening. Baseball, we'll get back into that more as we progress here. It's a little lull, a lot happening in the world of sports. So baseball, not my top priority right now. I know the Blue Jays walked off last night. Dodgers crushed the Cardinals. Fernando Tatis Jr. a little banged up for the Padres, so that's a little bit of a concern for the Padres and Major League Baseball. But we'll get back into that as we go along here. A lot of playoff interesting things. We'll see what happens with Mark Scheifele. Any news today, I'll bring it to your attention tomorrow morning. So I'll be back to discuss the games tonight, the NBA action, to see if LeBron James can push it to 7. And also I'll be doing a podcast over the weekend with Matt Wright, frequent guest, where we're going to discuss the playoffs. We're going to rank the top 5 players remaining in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So we're going to give a little list. So just the teams that are remaining, all the teams that are eliminated, players aren't eligible. We're going to do that. And then we're going to play a little game that I did play with Casey Ward a few weeks ago when he was on, called Fact or Fiction. Bounce around the world of sports and make a few predictions as we see the offseason of the NHL, NBA, and the National Football League as well. So everybody, thank you for tuning in today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great day. Enjoy the sun, and we'll talk soon.